This is a small freight yard and locomotive service facility scene. We begin with a freight house very similar to the freight house that the Reading Railroad had at 8th and Buttonwood Streets in Reading, where my father was the agent for many years. There was a freight transfer operation there where employees during the day loaded LCL cars for various locations around the country, and then in the end of the afternoon those cars were pulled off their sidings and taken out into the main yard to be on trains leaving the Reading area and going to their destinations around the U.S. In this same area we have a steam locomotive service facility with the coaling and tower and the water tower for adding coal and water to the steam locomotives and also adding sand to the locomotives. In the rear of the scene is a coal yard reminiscent of a coal yard that my uncle Elvin had, Elvin A. Adams Coal and Fuel Oil, which was located in Temple, Pennsylvania, where coal was delivered off of a trestle. As you see there, the coal dropped out the bottom of those railroad cars onto piles below the trestle and then was loaded into coal trucks and delivered to people's houses for heat. In the rear are two large industrial factories which go very nicely with the scene but also serve as a tunnel to hide the main line of the railroad as the trains move from left to right across this scene. Toward the left-hand end, we have a large fruit warehouse, fruit distribution building, and then we come to the diesel service facilities with facilities for adding diesel fuel and lubricating oil to the diesel locomotives, and also a tower for adding sand to the locomotives, and then a shop building where employees could work on maintenance of diesel locomotives. And the shop building had both an overhead crane, which can be seen there, and also had pits for working underneath the locomotives.
Memorial Park was built as a getaway for the people who live in the city, and it's serviced by the trolley. The trolleys were used to take people to outlying locations for having fun. Our Memorial Park has the theater, in the barn. It has a playground. I see that there are people having a birthday party today. There's a concession stand and a pavilion. This is also the site of the trailhead to go to the Emilysburg Overlook. The theater and the box office were built by my dad. Once he moved here from the farm in 1995, he got into the hobby too, and he enjoyed this model. His name was Joe Bonesack. On the way to the park, trolley goers will see the garden. It's here. And we have some sunflowers that we purchased in Germany, and we had to put those together. There are actually 4 different parts to each sunflower. I like to say this is my dad at his produce stand. The building here is called the Casa Anita. That's a bed and breakfast named after my sister Anita. You can see somebody's either packing up or leaving the bed and breakfast. She also gave me this horse and wagon, which had probably 35 pieces to put it together.
Moving on down from Casa Anita, we come to Curtis Paint's store and to the local fire department. We have a gas station here, Texaco gas station. Price of gas recently went up. It's now 18 cents a gallon. People are not happy about that. And then we have the plumbing supply store here on the curve. And the track moving around to the Weekly Herald, the local town newspaper's printing offices. As we round the curve, we see a coal delivery truck bringing coal from the coal yard that we saw earlier and delivering it here for the heating of this building. And then we look over toward the main intersection in the downtown area with the passenger station in the distance, a church on the other corner with stained glass windows. And here we have the town park with lots of activity. This is a Sunday afternoon. We have a concert at the gazebo in the park. You can see the band playing there and quite a few people sitting on the benches. We have an ice cream truck and a vendor with a popcorn machine that have arrived to sell their wares. We have a picnic going down here in the low part of the park near the bridge over the stream. In the background we see buildings, city buildings with businesses on the first floor at least of each. We have Tim's Music Store, our son-in-law Tim. We have David's Train Shop, our son David, in the foreground. We have some of the local youth have a basketball game going over here in the edge of the park area. And as we move on down the street, we see many other businesses. The corner business here is Christine's corner. Christine is our daughter, David's wife. We have a lot of other businesses along this section of the street. Restaurant on this corner, cafe with an interior. And then as we move still further over, we see an older section of town. The homes are from an earlier era, and in the backyard here we see them hanging wash on the line. We also see them giving the dog a bath in a tub there in the backyard.
This part of the town has older houses, kind of from the Franklin era, with a cobblestone street. Somebody's getting a new sofa today. If you look up the street, you can see the movie theater. They're playing Gone with the Wind. The Carnegie Free Library is also here with the flag on the top.
The Railway Express Agency is, of course, how you shipped your packages back then, a forerunner to UPS. And in the lower level here, we have the older industrial part of this city. The city, by the way, is named Emilysburg. It's named for our granddaughter, Emily, and is spelled with an H on the end, as in Pittsburgh. We have several industries down here, and they are not that careful about what they do, so the stream is somewhat dirty and industrial waste in it, but that's how things were done then. We have over in this corner the Gogler Cog and Deer Works. Gogler Cog and Gear. Dick Gogler was a very good friend of mine. He was also a high school mathematics teacher, as I was. And he had a major model railroad at his house. And I went to visit him one time and found the Jim Adams appliance store on his railroad. And very shortly after that, we named this industry here the Gogler Cog and Gear in Dick's honor. And things are never quite finished in an area. You notice that friend of ours recently started to manufacture and distribute what appear to be cement blocks for construction work, and so we've decided to add an addition to this factory building using the blocks that we got from our friend Barry.
course, one friend was disappointed that the men were still mixing concrete by hand, and so he gave us a concrete truck to help out. This is the main street of Emilysburg. We're glad there's a town park right there at the corner, has a nice fountain. Then next is the department store. This is Jean's department store, named after our daughter. Since this depicts the 50s, there's still some show windows in the department store. The James Building is a very good finance place. Next to it is Read More Books and Owen Finance Company. Then the major hotel downtown, right across from the station, as most were in the 50s. The street is pretty busy today. Here's a figure down on this end that I say is my mother with her caregiver. You can see that she's using her walker today. But there are people of all ages and lots of traffic on the street. The town clock is right here across from the station. That was a fixture in near many stations. Our station is an above-ground station where the loading platforms were underneath the street and the station area.
So we've moved as far as the passenger station here in Emilysburg, and as some stations are in eastern cities particularly, the tracks are built below street level, and so passengers from the city, those staying at the Ambassador Hotel, will enter the station and then go down. You can see the stairway here, and there's a stairway further over at another platform. No escalators yet at this age. But down the stairway to actually board their trains. And then, as the sign says, to eastbound trains, there's still another stairway that goes down under the tracks and comes up here on this platform in order to get to this side in order to board an eastbound passenger train. You can see a lot of people waiting for trains here. An advertisement for the purchase of savings bonds and for enrolling and enlisting in the armed forces. There's a Great scene here of a family having their picture taken just before they board the next train leaving Emilysburg. As we move away from Emilysburg, we note on the mountain the Emilysburg Overlook. You'll remember the trailhead that we looked at on the other side of the mountain earlier. And the trail comes across, and now we get a great view over the city and over the passenger station and passenger yards here. As we move on past the mountain, notice the deer up there in the trees. And we move over to the other side of Memorial Park. The trolley car is stopped at the Memorial Park station right now. There's a tennis court there, which was built by our granddaughter Emily, for whom the town Emilysburg was named. Emily was a very strong tennis player during her high school years, and she built the tennis court for my railroad. We also have a baseball game going, softball game. And here on the lower level, down on track level, we have Union Refrigerator Transit Company. For many, many years, as goods that needed food, particularly from the West Coast, or meat from the Chicago area, was shipped to the East Coast for grocery stores, it had to be kept cold. And before they had mechanical refrigeration on railroad cars, they actually loaded large blocks of ice into bunkers in those hatches in the roof. And that kept the cars cold for quite a few hours, and then the train had to stop and add more ice in order to keep the food in good condition. We have some more modern manufacturing area here and a complex network of tracks to serve those industries. You notice that the one boxcar there actually goes in part of the building in order to be out of the weather for loading or unloading. And over here we have Centennial Flour Mills, which have the 4 large silos in addition to the processing plant. And then we have a large rock quarry that is served by the railroad. And that rock quarry serves two functions. It's a good visual scene, and it's very appropriate for something along the Reading Railroad. But it also is an access point to reach parts of the railroad that can't normally be reached. It is a bottomless pit, and you can actually stand up inside of the rock quarry to reach certain parts of the railroad if you need to take care of a train accident or something like that. There's a complex network of track right in the front here. The tower building with the green siding on part of it controls what we call a Y. If you look at the three tracks here, they form a letter Y, where a train can come in one leg of the Y, back up, and then leave and be going the other direction. So you could turn an entire train on the Y. And that was very common in railroading operations. And it serves as the beginning of the branch line that we have that goes to our coal regions to the town of Isabel Springs. And we'll talk about that later. Here we are approaching the village of Lauradale, named for another granddaughter, our granddaughter Laura. It has a very active downtown, and you'll notice we have a hotel downtown, again located very close to the passenger station, and it contains a pool hall on the first floor, which has been named Susie's Q in honor of our daughter Susan. And you see that they are actually delivering a new pool table to the pool hall today while we're taking this video. This is an example of a mixed train which was run on low density branch lines of the railroad, primarily freight cars being delivered, but also one passenger coach on the end of the train. And this particular train makes one round trip a day from Lauradale here back up to Isabel Springs in the coal region area. There's very little passenger business on this branch line, and so one train a day is what we operate. One of the main functions of the Reading Railroad was to haul anthracite coal from the coal regions to the big cities of eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And so we have this town of Isabel Springs, named after our granddaughter Isabel, which is to be located in what we call the coal regions or the anthracite fields of Pennsylvania. It's more mountainous there. As you can see, the elevation is higher, and so the leaves are beginning to turn on the mountainside. And there's a large coal breaker there, which sorted the coal, broke it into different sizes, which were then loaded into hopper cars and delivered to wherever they were going in the industrial eastern Pennsylvania area. We have a town park in the very, very front here with children playing on a little child-sized train and flying their kites. We have some older stores. This is not as prosperous a town as the cities of Lauradale or Emilysburg. There is a church located here, which was built by Carol's dad, Joe Bonesack. The house that is located on the main street here is of particular importance. My grandfather, Joseph Schwalm, operated, this would be my mother's dad, operated a general store on the main street of the town of Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. And several years ago, I opened a Christmas present and found inside this model of that store. The model was made by using a postcard with a photo that was taken by my mother's oldest brother, Uncle Alvin, of the store. And Carol used this to make a model, built the model right under my nose without my knowing she was doing it, and created, I think, a very realistic model of the Schwalm store. I spent many a summer, a week or two at a time, at that location with my grandparents. We have here the Falls View Hotel, which is one of the earliest buildings that Carol and I built in our marriage. People used to joke with us about the fact that you couldn't really see the falls from the hotel until we took leftover parts from other kits and constructed this stairway and said, now you can walk down and see the falls. One of the early products in the way of aerosol shaving cream was a product called Burma Shave, and their method of advertising all over the country was to build little roadside signs that you saw as you travel along two-lane country roads, and each of those signs had some sort of a poem on them, and we've decided to depict that here with a poem that says, "This hobo lets his whiskers sprout, it's trains not girls that he takes out," and then the words Burma Shave. And that's how all of those things were done. We have a car hauling a camper up the road, and I have to mention this because we have no idea where the camper came from. Some folks visited for an open house here sometime a couple years ago, and when it was all finished, that camper was there and it hadn't been there before. You have some men changing the billboard when billboards were not electronic yet. And this road eventually leads up to the iron foundry and to the area that has trees here and several rail fan photographers waiting for the next train to come along.
This is the valley between Isabel Springs and Charlottesville. This features a lot of rural activity. There's the grain elevator. There's the blacksmith shop, the nursery, and of course the farm. It's a decent-sized river that runs through this area. Being at the foot of the mountain, it drains a lot of water. So the campground is right there on the edge. Some fisher people are working out trying to catch some fish. But more importantly, the farm is very busy. The garden, the windmill, the barn, and several kinds of animals. The cattle, the steers, the pigs, the goat, the chickens. Two kinds of farmers meet here on the road. The farmer who still uses horses and the farmer with the tractor. It's also time to bale hay and to get a field ready for planting. These bridges are always interesting to see because there's so many different kinds. One of my favorite things to do is to add birds to the landscape. So there's some swans in the river. And a hawk there on the edge of the bridge abutment. The red barn is one that we built quite a long time ago too. And unlike the plastic houses that come with the walls already formed, this is made of wood, and each of the strips of shingles is put on individually. It was a project, but we had a great time doing it. Our fourth town is Charlottesville, named after our granddaughter Charlotte. It's a town that pretty much mixes the rural flavor and the railroad activity of the area. We have a stockyard, a diner, a barrel factory, a church, a couple of houses, and a farm. The farm is actually made of paper, and my dad constructed a very large farm on his railroad. This is what remains of it. And up on the hill is another small farm. Indulging my bird loving again, here are some crows on the rocks. Over here are some gulls. There's an egret down here in the drainage ditch. And there's some terns here somewhere too. Right over here on the rock wall, there's some terns. Indulging our love of detail, we have a very busy picnic happening here in the backyard. Even a horseshoe game over near the church. But there's something on the grill and the plates are ready to go. It looks like the potluck dinner is ready. Here's the house that I prepared. This is a Sears catalog house. During the early 1900s, you could buy a whole house from Sears. And this house is furnished using mostly 3D printed parts and painting them and arranging it so the mom is cooking, the little boy is looking in the fridge, dad's just waiting for dinner, and way in there's a dining room where the little girl is setting the table. Apparently this boy doesn't want to eat because he is out in the treehouse.
Well, as many people in the railroad hobby today, they began their introduction to railroads with Lionel trains as children, and I was no exception to that rule. I got my first train when I was 2 months old, I am told, and I've tried to put up some things on this bookcase that represent different stages of going through the Lionel trains and then moving on to HO gauge, which I did as a senior in high school. But there are Lionel trains on each shelf. The third shelf, though, is reserved for a portion of Charlottesville. Charlotte was very short at the time and could not see Charlottesville up on the main platform. And so we worked together to build a portion of Charlottesville on this bookcase shelf. And she did the painting of the clouds in the background and helped us to put together the kits for some of the buildings. And the Charlottesville local actually makes round trips between Charlottesville and Lauradale to take passengers from this town up to the main transfer station at Lauradale. A few things on the wall here that I'm really happy to have in my collection. One is a Reading Company publicity photo of the Crusader train. We saw that model running earlier. This is a picture taken of it on the New York branch, 1937, so it was probably a black and white photo that was manually colorized then. But this photo hung in the Reading Outer Station for many years, and when that station closed, it then hung in the Railroad YMCA here in Reading for a few more years. A picture here of the yards and the trackage in the town of Pine Grove, Pennsylvania, which we talked about earlier, where my parents were both from and where my grandparents lived and had the store on the main street in Pine Grove. I remember that area very well as I spent summer weeks visiting my grandparents. This is a very rare drawing. It was used to raise money to build the Reading Railroad originally. The drawing was made with a crow quill pen. The drawing was then taken to England, where it was engraved on a copper plate, and then printed copies could be made from that copper plate. And that copper plate belongs to a friend of mine who took that copper plate recently to the Philadelphia Academy of Fine Arts and had 10 more prints made from that plate. And this is one of those prints showing the topology, the topography of the area to be covered by the original Reading Railroad, and was used to convince investors to invest in that railroad. The last thing we have several views of the Reading Outer Station here, which show it in different eras, and during the steam era and during the diesel era, it looks quite different from one to the other. One of the things that I remember very much as a child is that the Addams Family summer reunions, where a number of summers were held in a park near the location of this bridge. This was a Reading Railroad bridge on the S&S, which stood for the Schuylkill and Susquehanna branch of the railroad, west of Pine Grove, where the railroad track crossed the Mill Creek. The park is not in this drawing, but it does show a train traveling across the bridge. When you reverse to look at that, it almost appeared like it was a covered bridge and the tracks must go through it. But the track actually ran over the top of the bridge, and the wooden siding was there simply to protect the structure of the bridge. Many fun memories of family reunions held there, and as children running across that bridge against the orders from our parents.